Welcome back to AV Veterans Talk. We're continuing our conversation with Danny Bazzell, this week's guest. So, Danny, your Civ Mill, Army, Navy, now your Air Force. You may have the Marine Corps somewhere down the road.
I do.
You do have the Marine Corps. Yes. Okay, you're going to get there. So, your transition, to Civ Mill, and now all of a sudden your love for the Air Force. What festered that?
So, in summer of 1982, the 2nd 77th Armor was part of a mechanized brigade up at Fort Lewis with the 9th ID. And we got called on an emergency deployment readiness exercise, an EDRI. So you gather all your equipment, you're told to hang out in the barracks until somebody tells you what you're doing. So in those exercises, you don't know where you're going, why you're going, you don't know what's going on. You're just cut off from the world at that point. We ended up road marching our entire battalion of tanks out to McChord Air Force Base, which is now Joint Base Lewis-McChord up in Washington, and hung out on the runway up there for a while. And then one day these C-5As lands, and the battalion commander comes over to me and he says, "Sergeant Buzz, you're the first one to load." And there's camera crews, there's all this stuff going on, and I'm thinking, what's happening here? This is like an award ceremony or something.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out I was the first heavy armored vehicle to be loaded on a C-5 since the Yom Kippur War.
Oh, wow.
When they had air loaded a lot of tanks on C-5s, but it stressed out the wings, and they were experiencing wing cracks in the C-5s. So they load me and my M88 up onto the C-5. It was myself and one of my crew members, and we were the only people on the plane besides the crew. And we take off not knowing where we're going. The crew chief comes down and he goes, "Sergeant, if you want to come up to the flight deck and sit with us, you're more than welcome to." So my other crew member and I, we go up there, and then the pilot says, "You want to come in the cockpit?" And
Yes.
of course.
Yeah.
So I ended up spending the entire flight sitting in the middle observer seat of a C-5 watching the pilots fly us.
Oh, lucky you.
And that's like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we found out ultimately we were going to Holloman Air Base in New Mexico to do a desert warfare exercise for several weeks across the deserts of White Sands. We land, it's July, and it's literally feels like 130 degrees down on the flight deck. My job and my vehicle's point for being the first ones was, as these C-5s, they were loading our entire brigade, airlifting in C-5s and C-141s to Holloman. And my job was that when they landed and dropped their ramp, if the vehicle on that plane couldn't start under its own power and get out of there, then my job was to run out, hook a tow cable up to it, and drag it off, because they had 30 minutes to land, taxi, unload, and be back airborne again.
Right.
It was how fast can we deploy, rapid deployment exercise. And so we're sitting on the end of this runway for about 4 days. And the first day we're there, it's blistering hot. We're in a metal tank. And so there's no shade, other than you can get inside the tank and there's shade, but it's it's probably 20 degrees hotter inside the vehicle. And at the end of the day, right around sunset, we're burnt, we're dry, dusty. Back when the Air Force had blue vehicles, it was this dark blue vehicle with yellow letters, says U.S. Air Force, pulls up, and this airman gets out and he goes, "Sergeant, I'm supposed to take you into the base and get you showers and some chow, and if you want to go to the BX and get some items, toiletries, whatever, we'll take care of you." And so
Wow,
I
nice.
get in this air-conditioned van and we drive over the main base, and they took us to the dorms. We got showers, got cleaned up. They took us in and fed us hot chow. Let us buy sodas and ice to take back to the track, and
Nice.
And so it's like, this is awesome. This is how you guys live, you
Yeah.
know? And
All the time you're cursing your recruiter in Pasadena.
Exactly.
Why didn't
So
that Air Force recruiter there?
why did he have to take lunch then?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and we get back out to the flight line. The next day repeated itself. At the end of the day, that blue van shows up again, and on the final night, the third night I think it was, he takes us in, and we knew we were done tomorrow, and that we would be heading out into the desert with everybody else.
Yeah.
So we went to the BX and we loaded up every empty jerry can I could find. We loaded up with ice and sodas and cigarettes and everything else, and off we went to the field. And you'd be surprised once people found out you had ice cold Cokes how much they were willing to.
Oh man, your best friends all of a sudden.
So I fell in love with the Air Force
Yeah.
at Holloman Air Base, New Mexico, and I thought these guys are the bees and knees, and I have the greatest respect for them. So
We used to always joke in the Air Force during our time period that each airplane in the Air Force and their crew had their own. They actually had a public relations officer for each airplane, because they would always be promoting themselves,
Right.
and stuff, and it was just the greatest kind of camaraderie. And I have some stories. I'm not going to get into them, to my stories in there and stuff about a red flag up
Up in Nellis.
up at Nellis, and we were out in the desert with an O2 squadron, and our guys were flying in and out of Nellis to go into the thing, bringing out steaks, and the Army was actually
Eating out of our
right and
cans.
stuff, and the drift from the charcoals and
Oh,
burning
yeah.
steaks were hitting the Army guys, and Major from the Army came over a little upset, but anyway,
Yeah, so that's-
we had good times in the Air Force, but once again, all services, they'll have their niche and their goods and their fun stuff, So anyway, so we're gonna take another break here. I think we're about right there, and then when we come back, we'll really dig into the flight test and
Okay.
things we got going out there. So thanks, Danny. We'll be right back. I'm Bob Alvis, and thank you for joining us for this segment of AV Veterans Talk.